Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. Welcome back to another PAP Reports. Today is Friday the 7th of February 2020. And we're starting today with a report about a horrific assault that happened here in Liverpool yesterday around 7 o'clock. This was an attack of epic proportions and I don't think I've ever heard of such an unprovoked and unwarranted attack of this calibre. The victim was me and the assault came from this lot.
Is that hair gel?
Yeah.
Great. I could use
No,
some.
you don't have to. You don't.
I just ran out.
So when you say killer, you mean
He's a murderer. Yeah.
like an actual convicted murderer?
He killed people.
I couldn't believe the abuse my Barnet was getting from you guys. Now, if I were one of these snowflakes, I might have just stamped my feet and headed off to my safe space. I don't have a safe space. But instead, I decided to confront the issue by today wearing a hat instead. So you can't make me cry again. Now, back to today's reports. Normally, the PAP Reports brings you news of police abusing powers. And although the channel is called Police Abusing Powers, the aim of the channel is to highlight those in positions of authority who abuse that position, including security, teachers, councillors, etc. And today we actually have a councillor and a solicitor in our first two reports. So first up we have 30-year-old Greenwich Labour councillor Tonya Ashikodi, who, despite living in a council house in Plumstead with her father, owned and rented several homes collecting thousands in rent. Now, you may be asking why this is a problem. Well, the forms that she would have needed to sign in order to obtain a council house seem to have deliberately been falsified by failing to declare that she had other properties. A council-owned house is normally for those who have nowhere else to live in overcrowded accommodation, or need a property due to disability, medical or welfare hardship reasons, although there are some other reasons. Ashikodi, being the owner of several other properties, did not and does not fall into the category of being eligible for a council home, and by way of alleged fraud by false representation, she failed to inform the council of her other properties, the income she was getting, and has therefore been living in a property with lower rent, which should have been for other vulnerable members of society. Now, she denies 2 counts of fraud by false representation and one count of perverting the course of justice. However, Robert Fitt, prosecuting, said these were frauds by false representation because Ms Ashikodi told these lies to Royal Borough of Greenwich, knowing they were lies, in order to obtain a council house for herself without having to give up any of the 3 houses she already owned. On the facts of this case alone, you can see that it took 3.5 years for the Royal Borough of Greenwich to find a suitable property to offer Ms Ashikodi. If Royal Borough of Greenwich cannot find social housing for someone on the waiting list, the council may be obliged to pay for temporary accommodation for that person, putting them up in a hotel or a hostel or something along those lines. The reality is that by obtaining a council house that she didn't really need, Ms Ashikodi has prevented someone in real need of being offered the tenancy at 13B Robert Street. The Royal Borough of Greenwich estimates a loss of almost £67,500 from keeping someone in temporary accommodation between June 2012 and July 2018. That does not include the subsidised council flat rent paid by Ashley Cody or the significant amount she received from her other rental properties. How this seems to have come to light is that when someone is elected as a councillor, the council does a land registry check. Not entirely sure why, but when Ashley Cody found this out, she went to speak to the chief executive of the Royal Borough of Greenwich, saying that her father had recently transferred several properties into her name. However, after checks were completed, it shows that Ashley Cody's father actually transferred the properties to her over 10 years prior. All of which meaning that she was never entitled to a council property. Ms. Ashley Cody now claims that she was only ever the legal owner of the properties and never held the beneficial interest. And that's how she attempts now to avoid conviction for fraud, by suggesting she was not dishonest when she filled out those forms in October 2008 and in May 2012, because she was only the legal owner of the properties and held them on trust for her father. Tonya Ashley Cody continues to deny 2 counts of fraud by false representation and 1 count of perverting the course of justice. Her father Tony denies perverting the course of justice. The trial's continuing, and I'll bring you updates as and when they're available. A Scottish solicitor, Martha Ann Rafferty, has been found guilty of professional misconduct and fined by the Scottish Solicitors Discipline Tribunal after being convicted of road traffic offences. In 2012, Rafferty was convicted at Glasgow Sheriff Court for failing a breathalyser test. In August 2014, she was convicted after failing to provide police with 2 specimens of breath, and she was again convicted for the same offence in 2018 and subsequently banned from driving for 10 years. The Scottish Solicitors Discipline Tribunal chairman, Nicholas White, said, "The tribunal considered that failing to cooperate with the police in relation to providing a specimen of breath in these circumstances was a serious and reprehensible departure from the standards of competent and reputable solicitors. She was required by law to provide a sample and failed to do so. This conduct was likely to bring the profession into disrepute. It brought her integrity into question, which therefore was breach of Rule B12, which provides that a solicitor's personal integrity must be beyond question." The tribunal considered whether a restriction on the respondent's practicing certificate was appropriate, but decided instead that these circumstances it was not suitable. He added, "Strike-off was not proportionate in the circumstances. However, the tribunal wished to mark the seriousness of the offence. It considered whether a short period of suspension would be appropriate to mark the seriousness of the offence, but was ultimately persuaded that a censure with a substantial fine would suffice." Rafferty was fined £10,000 for her misconduct. Now, isn't it a shame that police are not subject to the same kind of sanctions instead of pitiful £250 fines for their misconduct? Maybe fining people in positions of authority properly will help to limit the amount of people committing misconduct. I want to say well done to the Scottish Solicitors Discipline Tribunal for dealing with people properly. Let's hope that some of the other organisations take a leaf out of your book. A formal complaint has been made against an unnamed police service of Northern Ireland constable for failing to investigate an alleged homophobic attack. The complaint suggests that a man was attacked at a bar in December 2018, claiming it to be a homophobic attack by a customer who then assaulted him. The PSNI constable recommended that the attacker receive a community resolution order rather than facing prosecution, even though the victim allegedly sustained a split lip and a chipped tooth from the attack where he was punched in the face. When interviewed by the police ombudsman, the constable admitted making a community resolution order without even looking at the victim's injuries. Well, that's a whole new level of police investigation going on right there. The constable claimed he had no knowledge of any available photos of the injuries, yet an entry in the case file is said to have been enough to have alerted him to their existence. He also claimed that there was lack of any medical evidence as the victim had not been seen by a doctor. The police ombudsman said, in my view, the photographs alone were grounds for investigating the alleged offence, and that it was also concerning that the officer recorded no reasonable rationale for his decision to disregard the alleged hate crime element, nor for treating the incident as common assault rather than assault occasioning actual bodily harm. The police ombudsman recommended the officer be disciplined by the PSNI for his significant failing, a recommendation that has since apparently been acted upon, although I can't yet find any indication of the action taken at this time. Another unnamed idiot, this time from South Yorkshire Police, and this time not an actual police constable, but a wannabe constable who worked as civilian staff for the force. Details have been released by South Yorkshire Police after a misconduct hearing which resulted in the unnamed police staff receiving an official warning. Ooh. After an allegation was made that the member of staff had produced a badge or card and instructed a driver to pull over before advising the driver that they were an off-duty police officer and gave them a warning for dangerous driving. I think that goes to show how the mentality of some people can change when they have a perceived authority, a bit like in the Stanford experiment. A South Yorkshire Police spokesperson said, "This was a member of police staff, not a police officer, which is why it ended up with misconduct proceedings." Well, it would have ended up with misconduct proceedings if it was a police officer. It was a male member of staff involved in the incident, and it happened in Scunthorpe. There is no further information on this incident, but I would certainly be questioning the psychological state of someone who thinks it's acceptable to pretend to be a police constable, and the potential future implications it could have by keeping that person employed. 46-year-old Matthew Hodgson, a West Mercia police officer, has been dismissed without notice for gross misconduct. A special case misconduct hearing was held yesterday which found that the now ex-Sergeant Hodgson had breached the standards of professional behaviour following his criminal conviction for theft and attempted theft at Kidderminster Magistrates Court on the 25th of October 2019. The hearing ruled that his behaviour amounted to a breach of the standards of professional behaviour in relation to discreditable conduct, honesty and integrity, and that his behaviour was dishonest and brought discredit to the police service. Previously based at Shrewsbury, he had been suspended for the duration of the investigation. Superintendent Rebecca Love from West Mercia Police's Professional Standards Department said, "The misconduct hearing found that the behaviour of Matthew Hodgson fell below the standards we and the public quite rightly expect from our officers and staff. Members of the public must be able to have trust and confidence in the police. That ship sailed a long time ago. And enable us to uphold the law, and where an officer behaviour falls below that standard and undermines this trust and confidence, it is only right they are dealt with in the most appropriate manner." Hodgson will be placed on the College of Policing barred list and will not be employable within the UK Police Service. Police attended the Moon Underwater Wetherspoons pub on Deansgate in Manchester city centre yesterday, the 6th of February, after reports of a customer assaulting the duty manager by pinning him against the wall by his neck. A Greater Manchester Police spokesperson said, "We were called shortly before 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, February the 6th, to a report of an assault at the pub on Deansgate, Manchester. Officers attended and spoke with a man in his 40s. Turns out the guy was in fact off-duty police. No arrests were made. Surprise, surprise. Bosses at the pub claimed the man in his 40s was with two young girls. He allegedly became aggressive when they failed to show ID. The group was asked to leave," the Wetherspoons spokesperson said. When they refused to leave, the duty manager approached them and, while trying to remove their drinks from the table, was assaulted and pinned against the wall by the neck by the man. The man was restrained by a couple of other members of staff and police were called. The police attended quickly, but after talking to the man who reportedly claimed to be off-duty police officer, they allowed him to leave. Wetherspoons has zero tolerance of violence towards its staff and will work closely with police on this matter. Yes, I can imagine the police will be scrambling over themselves to get this one resolved, can't you? Greater Manchester Police confirms that the constable does not work for their force area. What's the bets if he was there with 2 young girls who refused to show ID? He's from the South Yorkshire Police Force area. Anyway, it's a short video for you today. That's all I have. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.